Kia ora, and welcome to the programme. Emergencies affect everyone. Individuals, communities, regions, even nations, depending on their size and seriousness. And how well we recover from them depends on how well we have prepared to recover. In this third and final episode, we look at recovery, the final of the 4 R's that the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, provides strong national leadership for. The 4 R's are reducing risk, being ready for, responding to, and recovering from emergencies. Recovery often outlives response. Those outside the crisis zone may have moved on, but those still within that zone may still have ongoing problems. How does a good recovery process help remedy that?
Good coordination is key in the transition to recovery and the recovery phases.
The recovery team should convene once the initial impact assessments have been done. The recovery manager then links into the incident management team to be abreast of and aligned with the response planning and activities. Over the next days, the recovery team will work alongside the response team on those immediate recovery activities. At the same time, they'll also start focusing on the longer-term recovery plan.
Now, in its early stages, recovery might look a bit like response, with a focus on short-term problems such as getting services back into the community or dealing with continuing life safety risk. Over time, the focus shifts to medium to long term. It may be more a business as usual matter.
Recovery is one of the lesser understood aspects of emergency management. Much of the process cannot be standardised, and no recovery is the same. However, there are many roles which can be better understood and are legislated, and there are also community expectations upon roles.
I guess it's really important here to acknowledge that just because a recovery operation might be shutting down, a community's recovery will be continuing, and that's often with a really long tail. The shift from recovery to BAU happens when the coordination of those recovery agencies is no longer required, and those efforts that they were doing shifts to their BAU operations. So in an earthquake, this might happen when the majority of a community have returned to their homes, have rebuilt their communities, businesses are starting to operate again, and the economy is moving along again.
It's key to remember that there's an organised framework with roles and responsibilities in play. This is the framework that Civil Defence Emergency Management use for recovery and associated documents.
Local emergency plans should lay out agreed roles during recovery that are consistent with the National Recovery Framework.
Decisions on what to do next and where to spend money to fix things will need to be made. Some of this will involve building resilience in the community against future similar incidents. Even interim or long-term law or policy reform may come out of it. The importance of relations with stakeholders and the need to partner wherever practicable doesn't go away.
Māori response activation is instant. Generally it is up and running before a government response, and that often causes frustration. It's important we recognise, resource and reflect Māori contributions across all levels of the emergency management system. But how do we get there? We need to think about how we remove structural barriers to enable Māori leadership and engagement. Peacetime is when we need to work with iwi Māori. We need to assess what they require to ensure the emergency management system is responsive, inclusive and works for Māori. Recognise the capability and capacity of iwi Māori and marae. Understand their constraints. Maybe consider enhanced formal recognition of Māori in emergency management system, such as mandated roles within an EOC, or having agreements with marae should they wish to be a welfare centre.
It is absolutely vital that communities are able to participate in the recovery process right from the outset, from early planning stages through implementation of different projects and programs. The role of the Recovery Office is really to act as a convener to help in that planning, acting as an honest broker to bring parties together and creating multiple avenues to communicate what is happening to keep everybody up to date. One of the most important principles to consider during recovery is the don't do anything about us without us principle. So anybody that's affected should be at the table from the outset, participating in that process. The International Association for Public Participation, also known as the IAP2 model, is a good one to guide to what extent you're either informing the public or empowering them on a certain program. In Wellington last year, right before COVID, we ran a series of workshops that brought together 120 organizations to plan for the future recovery of Wellington after a large earthquake. We employed those types of guiding principles there and those types of tools to help shape what it might look like for the future.
Coordination continues to be critical as much for the recovery as for the response. Emergencies don't sit in some neat little box. There's a natural tension that arises at all these levels.
There's a natural tension between having a recovery being locally led and central government accountability. All the evidence base around the world demonstrates that the more locally led the recovery, the better the long-term outcomes, because the people and the businesses that are part of that recovery are the most invested in those outcomes and know their communities best. There's that tension, though, where central government is often being the funder and bringing a lot of money to the recovery itself, and so they're going to want to say in the outcome. This is best managed through leadership at all levels and setting shared expectations in that process. What we see in recovery is usually whatever is working well pre-event, the good, the bad, the ugly, it usually just gets amplified post-event. So those effective working relationships before the event actually happens is critical.
Clarity around our roles and responsibilities is achieved through increasing our pre-emergency dialogue and recovery preparation.
All emergencies are inevitably learning experiences too. So what can be done better based on past experience for next time?
Regulatory capability is really important to ensure the outcomes that are intended are happening. So it's important that regulators know what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it to really have the best impact across the system and the intended impact across the system.
After the Kaikoura earthquake and the failure of Statistics House, we were worried that there were more buildings in Wellington in the same condition. The government gave us a new set of regulations to enable us to require building owners to inspect their own buildings. Very expensive and very stressful for those building owners. These were new regulations, they hadn't been tried before. But what we did is we took existing people that understood the regulatory environment, understood the people that we were dealing with, and we took those regulations and applied them to a new situation.
During recovery, coordination becomes an even bigger challenge. You have a lot more money and different actors coming into the recovery ecosystem, all to do good things. The challenge for recovery managers is at this stage to move away from what was happening in response, which is more of a command and control mindset, to one of a convener and facilitator, where you're bringing those groups together to help kind of develop a common purpose. That group is really wide-ranging. It can be the private sector that is contributing a lot to the rebuild, local iwi, Māori, a host of central government agencies, local governments, a range of community groups, and so that coordination element is just critical.
So that's risk reduction, readiness, response and recovery in a nutshell. We hope you've taken something valuable away from these films, not least. You may not think you are a crisis regulator, but you may be. The groups that need to work together are wider than you think. The sorts of networks that need to be actively managed, and how to do so. Even if you are not a crisis regulator, there are key learnings in this about working across government, regulatory systems, and regulatory stewardship. That's it from us. Stay safe, stay well, and from all of us here on the programme, ka kite anō.